Welcome back to Stories from the Field, the Superintendent Podcast, where we look at education and educational decision making through the lens of equity. Sarah, how's it going? How are you?
Good, Doug.
Yeah.
Happy to be back. You left me on the edge of my seat last time. We were just getting to the good stuff, talking about the visit you got to do in Denver Public Schools, and kind of left off of talking about what Dr. Marrero is doing to kind of change the district.
I always appreciate when, a Board of Education member wants to talk to us when we come visit. And you're going to see this next conversation where we went over to see Dr. Carrie Olson at her university where she works in town in Denver. She actually trains teachers. So her class, after talking to Sho and me, was a bunch of aspiring, I think, social studies teachers. And, she's really kind of steeped in the work of public education. And we had a really interesting chat about what it was like to bring in Dr. Marrero. She was board president when he was hired, and now she sits on the board.
And was he like the chosen one? They knew he was going to be their guy, or was it a big search to find him?
Almost every district goes through a search of some sort. A district of that size, there typically is a large search agency and, several candidates. And, I think they ended up with Dr. Marrero partially, as you're going to hear from Dr. Olson, partially because he was an outsider. Dr. Olson makes it clear that was part of why they were interested in Dr. Marrero, because he brought that fresh perspective.
Been on the board since 2017. I'm in my second 4-year term. I taught in Denver Public Schools for 33 years, actually 32 and a half by the time I took my board seat. There had never been a career educator from Denver Public Schools on the board. I had no idea, of course, what was coming.
You're getting into.
We had a teacher strike, a pandemic. I've worked with 5 superintendents. I think what's really hard is the first thing that came to mind when you said that is managing polarities. Mm-hmm. Understanding there's groups who feel really strongly one way and groups feeling really strongly the other way, and they're both right and they're both wrong. And how do you think about the values that each, I don't know if you want to call it side, but each viewpoint brings, and how can you find a solution that manages for both of the things that people care about? I think that's one of the things that's really hard. The other thing that's really hard is time. I have always been a school board member who's enjoyed being in schools and meeting with constituents and just walking through the halls, meeting students. And now that I have a full-time job, it's become much harder, and I'm much more aware of how much time it takes. I mean, I knew that, but even more so now, because I was a board president during the pandemic. And so the former superintendent and I spent every morning from 9 to 10 on Facebook Live trying to answer questions in English and Spanish.
Oh my gosh.
During the pandemic, because people were craving information, and they weren't professional, they weren't curated, but they certainly got information out. And we also got a pulse on what questions people had. I was the board chair, the board president, and Jennifer Bacon was the vice president. And when we knew we had to do a superintendent search, we wanted to be sure that the firm that we used would represent the views that we were hearing from the community of the type of superintendent that they wanted. So we put out a request for proposals, and we did some searching around and talked with some of the search firms. But in that process, a search firm called Alma came up, and they had never done a superintendent search firm before. But in talking to them, they said, we'll do community engagement and the recruiting of the superintendent as together instead of separate like we had it, because we think it's really important that we do both to select a good superintendent for you.
Sure.
So we hired Alma. And then on the other end, what Alex was doing was looking for a superintendency, but he also didn't want to go the traditional route. Mm-hmm. And he happened to come up on a posting by this company he had never heard of called Alma.
Yeah.
And so that was where we met. Definitely there were some people, and there might still be some who are saying that, you're an outsider, what could you know about us? I think whenever you bring in somebody new that's from outside, it has its pluses and its challenges.
Right.
So I think one of the things that's been really helpful with Dr. Marrero coming in is just a fresh set of eyes on things. And that was something we had heard from the community when we asked the community, like, what would you like to see? And a lot of them said, we want to see a unifier, somebody who can try and bring us all together, and somebody who has some fresh ideas to solve some of our stickiest problems that we have. But I do find that Dr. Marrero and I share a lot of similar values when it comes to education. One of the things that I've really appreciated about him is he does really have a teacher heart. He does really think about what it means to be in the classroom. He also remembers where he came from. And oftentimes he'll reference being little Alexi, as he refers to himself when he was little, with his hair down to here and being a little disengaged in school. And I think that helps him always remember the student in the seat and not the label on the door, as he's fond of saying, to think about what is the student experience like. I also shared with you as we were getting ready to do this that we also like to read research about what's going well in other districts across the country. We like some of the similar authors of people who are writing books and articles about what works in urban education, because it's good to see what other people are doing out there and then thinking about how does that apply to Denver. It's not going to be the same. Like, it's not just like, let's just trust this expert, because we're also experts in our lives here in Denver. But it's very healthy to hear what other people have to say. And he'll send me dissertations at 2 a.m. and say, read this, doc, and see what you think. I really appreciate that. But of course, there are some people who are saying he doesn't know us, he doesn't represent us, he's not from here, he's not going to stay. You know, there's certain cultures that are built around the city of what a superintendent should look like. But, you know, I think he's the fresh ideas, something different. The last superintendents we had been a part of our system for a long time, and they had done a good job in that role, but I felt like it was time for somebody with some different ideas. So the day of the shooting where a student shot 2 of our employees, I was actually on my way to the school, that very school, because I've been meeting with the Students Demand Action Group at that school. And Dr. Marrero actually called me and said, you know, turn around, go home, you know, East isn't happening today. And then when I found out what had happened, the first thing I thought of actually was not again. Well, this is the first time we've had a shooting inside our school where people were shot. It is not the first time in the community of Denver that we've had gun violence.
Of course.
Being a teacher, 1997, I lost my first student to gun violence, Jose Leva, and that was pivotal for me and for the community that I taught in. Since then, we've lost many other students. And I think that it's on the increase, as we've seen statistically across the nation, especially coming out of COVID. And it's always very painful. Of course, the first thing you think about is the families affected by that. I thought of the first responders at the school, like the nurses, the psychologists, the people who are going to be right there helping the 2 employees who were shot. I thought about, of course, the employees who were shot. I thought about the young man. I thought about the students in that school and the teachers. Some of my friends are teachers at that school. One of my students, who's a pre-service teacher, who I'll see in a bit, she's also teaching at that school. So I first of all thought about the community and just the people who were first on the scene, who were incredibly helpful in making sure that those 2 deans got the attention that they needed. And just thinking about, what does this mean for, I know as a system we have to think about how are we going to handle violence, but also what about across our city? Like, students aren't safe in parks sometimes and in grocery stores. So we saw in Boulder a couple of years ago, there was a shooting in King Soopers. I'm sure you're familiar with the shooting in Aurora in Colorado in a movie theater. Like, how can we as a society get better at preventing gun violence? And we have a specific responsibility to make sure our schools are safe. But I worry about our students in the summer. What happens to them when they're no longer in our classrooms? Are school resource officers the answer? Not entirely, right? Because that also can create more of a school to prison pipeline. But is it just saying no SROs is the answer when we think about keeping our students safe? I think that's a tough question for us to be able to answer, because what I don't want to do is put SROs back in our schools that still facilitates the school to prison pipeline. But I also don't want our schools to be an unsafe place for students to learn.
But yesterday evening in all the board meetings, the validation comes when, not that I'm yearning to be yelled at or be criticized.
Right.
But you have to be prepared, and you have to have not only the tough skin, but take it as feedback and turn off that switch when you leave that boardroom. When people are disgruntled, they will let you know. When people feel like you've hurt them in whatever way, they will let you know, and they'll be vicious. They'll spew venom. Mm-hmm. So we're always going to hear that. What you don't hear is someone who's everything is copacetic.
Right.
And seldomly do you hear someone who's excited about the work. So just be prepared that all your great work is not going to be echoed, because people are not going to go out their way because they're content. And even those who have no qualms, you won't hear from them. You'll surely hear from those who are upset. And that's what we've been hearing for the past 2 years. But I'm upsetting what needs to be upset. So although some of it does resonate because it could have been a mistake by me and my team, the majority is validation. I was brought here to be a unifier and a disruptor. Unfortunately, when there's controversy, that really casts a cloud, and it's hard to get all the great work that we're doing out. DPS is at its peak when it comes to graduating students, and that doesn't happen by chance. That's systems shifting and making sure that we have students prepared to exit for whatever they desire, college, career, the forces. We're at our highest ever. Next year, mark my words, we'll even beat our current highest. And I feel like we're going to do the same thing when it comes to proficiency rates. And that's because we're looking at the entire child, but also looking at our systems through the adult experience, the student experience, and the system experience. And that's the anchor of our strategic roadmap. But specific highlights, aside from the graduation rate, we also have the future leaders. They're going to take your position, Doug. They may even lead our country. Remarkable. And this is not an understatement.
But, it's not all academics. The district's sustainability club, which is a group of students that came together on their own to help, put together an assessment of the district's operation to make it more environmentally and financially sustainable. These are kids.
That's such a Denver, that's such a cool thing.
But these are kids, some of whom are, are from families where no one's gone to college. If they go to college, they'll be the first college students, first generation college students.
Yeah.
Some of these kids are from poor backgrounds. Some of them come from homes where English is not the first language. They came together to form what is a club that has become a movement within the district and had significant impact.
Our students who are leading the charge, who created, as a result of their advocacy and their demand for action, board policy. And now, if I fail to meet these ends, I get in trouble. That's how important their work is. And if I can, I'm going to show you something. It happens to be here, and it's from February 1st, 2023.
Friends at Ed Week. Yes.
Yeah. So you know these folks here?
We're subscribers. Friendly.
Many of us work an entire career never to get highlighted in here, right?
Yeah, right.
So look, right dead smack in the middle of this, you'll see our scholars who have not a piece. Look at Gabe, and look at Meredith.
Wow.
These are some of the students who I believe you might have engaged with, and the work that they're doing. Not only is it helping us sustain our practice, we're going to make sure that our dollars go to the classroom and helping students. And the return on investment in this initiative is, to be quite honest, I came in as a novice. I'm learning from these students. Mm-hmm. I also want to give credit to Leanne Kittle, who is the driving force behind this initiative. Yeah. And it's one of the 6 major initiatives, what we call end statements here, which is the board's policy that directs me to come up with a plan to make sure that we achieve those ends. Mm. One of them is around sustainability, and it was driven because of the hard work of our students. So well beyond solar panels and solar farms, beyond our plants and our green initiatives. And we have one of the largest, if not the largest, Southwest plant in terms of how we produce a vegetation there.
I'm a beekeeper, so I take care of 20 hives throughout Park Hill. With my friend, we run a beekeeping business, and so I had been involved in that for a few years before I actually came to East and joined the Sustainability Club here. At one of the first meetings, one of the leaders, who's now one of my friends, was like, hey, there's this group called DPS Students for Climate Action, and we're meeting with the superintendent to talk about sustainability in DPS. And I was like, whoa, that sounds phenomenal. I want to be a part of that. And so I hopped on one of the meetings and kind of immediately just joined in. We passed the climate action policy April 21st, 2022. And then the climate action plan, which DPS sustainability worked on in addition to a financial impacts assessment plan, that was released, I believe, in June. Denver has all these sustainability goals, and because DPS is kind of run by the state, they don't have to follow that necessarily, and there was no policy stating that. So we wanted to make sure there was writing in place.
That was Mariah Rosenzweig. She was a senior at East High School.
It's DPS Students for Climate Action, which is actually an organization of multiple different schools that kind of came together. So they started it in 2021, and it was through the organization, the Youth Sustainability Board, and they got together with a few other students, including myself. So I was one of the first ones with them.
So that was Gabriel Nagel. He was a senior in Denver Public Schools and was one of the founders of the Sustainability Club.
We all worked together to establish this resolution. So that was the original form of the climate policy before.
Now let's hear from Amelia Rodriguez, another Sustainability Club member.
One of the founding members of DPS Students for Climate Action. DPS is the biggest school district in Colorado. They have enough money, and it's about time that they listen to us, the students, to do something about the biggest threat to humanity. And so I thought that if we just persisted enough, that we could get the policy passed. And so I just kept on going to meetings, and at the end of the day, it was worth it because we did get it passed.
Kids are amazing, Doug. Those kids are awesome.
Just amazing. But these kids started taking action, and these kids turned words into action, got their Board of Education to enact policy, which now binds every adult in that school system to follow that policy. If they want to violate the sustainability policy that these kids initiated, they are in violation of school district policy.
One of the main pillars of our policy is environmental justice. It's even on the policy that DPS has to be national leader in environmental justice. And environmental justice is all about equity.
Integrating gardens into schools and looking at what kind of energy we're using, where we're getting that from, how transportation is working. The connotation of sustainability is great, but in terms of the actual definition, we don't want to sustain what we have right now.
It's making sure that we're using resources in the natural world intentionally, and that there's resources left for other generations. We created this whole resolution and then shifted it to policy and passed that. But then we did have help from the district later on with the actual implementation plan, and that includes all the specifics. It's near 100-page document or whatever on all the specifics of what it means for DPS to be a national leader in sustainability.
What I think is great about Denver Public Schools, and I think we have to give tons of credit to Dr. Alex Marrero, is that the adults listen to him.
The first one would be Leanne Kittle, the director of sustainability. Her drive, her relentless passion.
She's just so inspiring. She's we can do this. If you can't find a solution here, we can find another solution.
There was a key catalyst in the form of Leanne Kittle, who was the district's sustainability coordinator.
In the world of sustainability, I always say build your tribe. You have to find the people that are going to lift you up, because every day is a challenge. You're trying to create system-wide change, and that is not easy. The kids are what gave me the juice to keep on going. They're the ones that inspired me. They're the ones that taught me. They taught me to slow down and breathe and be excited about where we're currently at and how far we have come. So I became the student in that whole process. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because it reminded me of why I'm in this, why I'm fighting for this. And our team does essentially pay for itself. We bring in revenue through rebates and renewable energy credits from our solar. We have about 46 sites with solar arrays on the roof. I think also creating the next generation of innovators, people who are going to create things that we have yet to think of, and allowing students that space to to develop solutions for challenges that are going to face their generation far beyond their time. I think Dr. Marrero is incredibly receptive to student voice, and I think that's why I thoroughly enjoy his leadership, because he does give voice to students. He has a student cabinet.
Yep.
And when these kids came forward about this issue, not once did he hesitate about supporting it. So I think him setting that tone for his leadership team just percolates throughout the organization.
Yeah, Leanne was really, part of kind of organizing these kids to get them to do this work.
You're not going to feel ready to be a leader, to be capable of being a leader. That's something that intimidated me, and you learn so much along the way. So if students are listening to this, I would say just jump in.
Don't listen to the naysayers that say that you're too young.
I'm always amazed, just generally, I think climate change and sustainability is one of these things that is so generational. Young people think that it's insane that we would ever, not fully support this with all our being.
I was just thinking, kids don't ever have that mindset of, I'm just one person, I can't make a change. That doesn't even cross their mind. What I do believe is generational. It's like recycling, right? Like older people, in my experience, don't find it important, whereas younger people are like, how can you not? Like, what? This is the only planet we have. Like, and they're so future thinking, whereas I don't think that's true with maybe the elderly generations.
Well, and these kids also, they think systemically. They think this is a large enterprise that takes up a lot of energy, has to cool buildings and heat buildings, and they thought of it as sort of a big picture piece, and that work is what landed them at the White House this past August, getting honored.
So we are here at Northfield High School, where we hosted the Vice President, Kamala Harris.
I just spoke with the Vice President of the United States.
Nearly every movement in our country that has been about progress, we have had young leaders at the head.
It was an absolutely incredible experience. I think I'm still in shock right now.
Looking out over the crowd and seeing everyone, and then knowing that behind me was the Vice President of the United States of America, and that my words were filling the space.
It was such a privilege to have our work recognized and have it honored in this way.
Really, what we're doing now is revolutionary. I mean, DPS is one of the first school districts to have a climate action plan and also a climate justice plan, something that focuses not just on, emissions or renewable energy, but how it's really impacting people within the school district.
Vice President Kamala Harris wanted to highlight students and youth voice and uplift them for the work that they've done here at Denver and inspire kids across the nation.
I really appreciate her openness, her open-mindedness, and her willingness to be wise by listening to the youth.
Doug, what are some other things that you would say are braggable or just some awesome things you saw while you were there?
I have to say, the electric buses are pretty cool.
Kids go on electric buses?
Yeah, I mean, not all of them, but it's not buses are some of the most expensive things that these districts buy, right? And the bus industry is pretty old school. But they've finally been pushed to start building, help districts build an electric fleet. A lot of districts are saying, you know what, yeah, it's too expensive, we're not going to do that. Not Denver. They're like, we got to adapt. We got to figure this out. Let's figure out where to put the electric charger stations. Let's figure out where the next row of bank of chargers can go. Let's figure out how to get these electric buses rolling.
I'm actually Native American by culture. And it's always been my belief that if we take away, we got to give back. And we've taken far too much from this environment with the idea that we're going to have no consequences to it. Yeah. So, the idea of getting to a place where we're zero emissions out the tailpipe and that we have a sustainable grid that's getting its energy from, say, solar power makes sense to me, because it's taking the least amount from the earth. So to me, it makes sense. It's a little cultural for me.
Every day, we're seeding, transplanting, and harvesting. My name is Mariah. I am the farmer educator here at Bruce Randolph for the hydroponic farm. We grow different kinds of greens, lettuces, collards, chards, and herbs like basil, cilantro, sage, all kinds of things. They just do really well hydroponically. And then we have a cucumber set up We have a few different vine crop systems that we're trying out. Cucumbers work really well. Tomatoes are hit and miss. It depends on if they want to live or not. But we do have some chili peppers going that we're trying out. All of the food goes directly to the kids, to the community, to the neighborhood. I'll have one class come in and they'll harvest, and then We Don't Waste comes and they pick up all of that produce. Then I'll have another class come in and they'll transplant into where we just harvested out of. And then I'll have another class come in and they'll seed. And so from seed to harvest is about 5 weeks, whereas outside it's like 3 months. We do this because everybody has a right to food. Everybody needs to eat and deserves to eat. And so by coming in here and doing the work, we are helping that happen, whether it be for themselves or for somebody else. We want to make this as accessible as possible because this neighborhood is a food desert, and that's why we're here. To serve this immediate community, and also teaching the kids that they can do this at home. Food desert means there's not a grocery store within immediate reach of them. So our closest grocery store, I think, I could be really wrong, but the one that I can think of is there's a Walmart, but it's at least, if you're driving, at least 15 minutes away.
So Mariah, told us that this part of Denver is kind of a food desert. And, there are a lot of families who struggle with food security in the neighborhood. They harvested 200 pounds of produce at the school, right? Which is around the corner from everyone's house.
I mean, and those are life skills. I didn't learn that in school about harvesting. And I mean, these are things that, yes, it helps you, but like, I'm just happy if I can keep the basil in my kitchen alive in my window, right? So I'm like, but talking, thinking about these community hubs reminded me of when we were in Victoria visiting Dr. Quentin Shepard. They also had these kind of community hubs where you've got food, some basic clothing, because it's not even about having free lunch at school. It's about what happens on the weekend. If your last meal is lunch on Friday, then how are you showing up to school on Monday, right? So it's this idea of providing resources, not only for the school day, but taking things with you home for the weekend. And I guess that's what's happening in Denver as well.
This gets so complicated, Doug, that I don't care how many PhDs we may have, you need to really know and love this stuff. So one of the blessings, I can't take credit for it. What I can take credit for is elevating it and bringing it closer to the superintendent's office and giving these students a platform to have access to the board and to share this not only in this national publication, but they've been to Harvard many times, right? And they always want to speak to the superintendent. I said, no, you don't need to speak to me. First of all, I'm not going to do it justice. Speak to the kids. Speak to the program director, the manager, the executive director. So one of the major highlights. Another, if I can, is our community hubs, which is common throughout the district, across the nation, I should say. And we had FACE centers, which is our family and community engagement centers, in which we really did the ESL classes and we onboarded families, more of a welcome center and a newcomer center. What I had is, in terms of the system experience, I know what my upbringing was. And although I was always a good student, I saw how easily I can get distracted, even if it's going home and not having a place to myself. And that's no exaggerations. I just said that we were sleeping in the kitchen at one point, right? So it was always outside. And I'm very thankful that I was able to go this way, but everyone around me went this way. So for me and the others to be successful, we need to create that environment. So we speak about food insecurity. We can even say, who does their taxes? I remember when I was going to college and I said, okay, I need taxes through financial aid. My mom said, taxes? Who does taxes around here? I'm on disability, right? But we don't know what we don't know. So what I created was a community hub, of course, for our students, to make sure that they have a place to engage in well beyond the bell-to-bell start and end times of a school.
Currently, we have 2 family engagement liaisons, and they meet with the families. So they're the stars of the show. They meet with the families, usually takes, Fidel Salazar.
My title sounds really fancy, but I'm just here to support the community any way that we can. We offer, like Fatima says, we offer a lot of resources. Basic needs, food, clothing, sometimes housing, sometimes rental assistance, sometimes energy assistance. You know how expensive energy has become in the metro area. So we offer those services too. You feel it in your heart to help others who are less fortunate. We just had a gentleman from Colombia come in 3 days ago, and he's working part-time with the school. And today he came in for some clothes that he needed clothes. So I'm gonna set up an appointment for later this week and get him some food for his family of 5, I believe he said. So he just got here 4 days ago, and we're already able to help him out.
So this is the boutique. We have clothing for the whole family, mom, dad, little ones, maternity section, newborn. We have toiletries, we have shoes, and all this is donated from the community. So we do clothing drives. People started to know about us, and they are dropping off bags and bags of clothing. So this is the classroom. Here's where we have most of our workshops. We did have a job fair back in January with 27 participants, and the participants were able to apply for a job that same day. And this is our play and learn area. This is also our childcare area. So when families are next door in a workshop, we take care of the kids here in this room. And this is our play and learn as well. That play and learn is a class that happens twice a week for 2 hours. And the little ones come with their caregivers, and the teacher, model activities for them.
But also for our parents to say, hey, this is a safe haven for you. So we can relieve the burden of being a parent. You know how difficult that can be, right? So we can have something for you to engage in. They asked me to be the keynote for the first graduating class of our parents with GEDs out of our hubs.
Oh, wow.
And they asked me to do it in Spanish, so I'm
From the
looking forward
hubs,
to that.
these are parents who took GED at the hub.
1 year long commitment, and now they're graduating out of our hubs.
Awesome.
So, but one of the major features, we've all heard of food banks, right? And it's great. Give me a can of pork and beans. I'll make do, right? I survived on plátanos and sardines. Yeah. My mom passed. Sardines, the red ones with a little bit of hot sauce on it, did me justice, right? So nothing against canned food. However, what we did is a partner with Gooder, good with an R at the end, and our city. Thank you, Mayor Hancock. And we partnered because he had an idea, and I said, well, I have an idea, let's merge these ideas because your idea can fit into my community hubs as one of the many offerings. So you're from New York, you understand this. It's not a food bank, it's a bodega on steroids is what I said, right? Meaning if there's food insecurity and little Doug comes in, okay, you want pasta tonight? Here are the ingredients, not just here's the fideos, right? Your spaghetti. Here's the sauce, here's the Parmesan cheese or whatever ricotta cheese you desire. But mom, here's the ingredients and the recipe. Make it a bonding experience for you and your child tonight.
And this is our market. This is just the side door coming in. But we are seeing that this is the main source of food for some families, unfortunately. And we try to help those families to find out all the resources, see if they qualify for EBT cards.
So taking it to the next level. Yeah. Right. So incredibly proud. We have 4. We're looking to expand in terms of our hubs, and it has resulted not only in more camaraderie in those neighborhoods, but students, families, even those that do not have any connection to our system, taxpayers, or even if they're not taxpayers, because they ultimately have to weigh in, whether it's our budget, whether it's our bond, or approval rating, because as you know, they're polling all over the place here, right? I wanted to do one in each region, but then there was a tremendous need to have some in specific areas. And what we are noticing is that those were the right locations because they're frequently visited. And we're looking to expand. I want to give a shout out to the DPS Foundation because they're looking to continue and expand the offerings, but also open up some more sites next year. So this whole concept that it takes a village and educating the whole child, it's put into practice through our community hubs. Days of this being, okay, make sure that your schools produce scholars who can read and write are so long gone. That notion is passé. especially now. They want to make sure they're safe and secure, not just because of what we're dealing with right now, which is a safety and crisis, quite frankly. But even after COVID, right? That was taken for granted pre-COVID in terms of making sure everyone is safe and secure. A student will never learn if they don't know that they're going to be safe next period.
Right.
Similarly, an educator is not going to do what they do best. And it's not a theory, it's proven fact. Great teaching results in great learning.
Right.
Proven. However, you're not going to get great teaching if they don't feel valued, supported, and secure.
Yeah.
So more than ever before, now we are making sure that everyone is safe, secure in many ways, not only physically, but also emotionally and in terms of compensation as well. Of course, education is our core function. So that's always on, but everything beyond that, as I just described when it comes to the hubs. You have no access to get your vaccinations, we can support there. How can we not? It's my duty to make sure that there are no obstacles for students. I think the turnover that we're seeing not only is because of burnout, I also recall, and you may recall, the shift in terms of seeing education as a business, right? Yes, we are chief executive officers. I definitely am here.
Sure.
But I'm superintendent, which is an educator. Trying to bring someone who is proven in, let's say, the technology field of the business sector, which there was a major movement around that a decade or so ago. Those folks have failed. I wish they wouldn't have, because as a result, we had turnover and we had disruption and we had some students who could have been supported better, but they have. The ay bendito syndrome, you know what that is?
No.
Oh, it's so difficult. Give us more money. Federal government, you're not helping us. Make a decision. Stop attacking us. Give us a raise. We're underfunded. All of that is true. Here, we're the second lowest funded state in the entire nation. And I settled the contract. Right? Last time they were out, they went on strike, and rightfully so, right? Because they felt like they were not being valued. You have to put your values into the work. There was no way that I was going to have our team members out there saying we deserve more and the system is not allowing us to. It was just never in the realm of possibility. We were going to settle the contract. I wish I had more in the pot to give, quite frankly. It is my goal to have every position here to be #1 in the state. Because if I do it and my colleague does it, we start competing. It's healthy competition.
Yeah.
Same thing happens across the state. What you never hear from me is, I'm not getting the support from the federal government, not getting the support from the state government. Do not get me wrong. I will go and lobby.
Yeah.
But the ay bendito syndrome has never gotten me anywhere, which is the pobrecito syndrome. Poor me. Look what I'm doing and I'm not being appreciated. You're not built for this work if that's the case. Give me COVID. Give me a reorg. Give me new leadership. Give me a strike. Give me a shooting in a school. And not only will we persevere, we're going to keep getting stronger. So what else can happen? What else can happen? So that's the encouraging part.
Okay.
In terms of those things that superintendents in their career never have to deal with, in 3 years of doing this, I've checked all those boxes, quite frankly. Name something that's so controversial that I haven't been a part of. I can't name it.
Yeah.
If you believe in John Cotter's theory of change, after you create a sense of urgency, you build a coalition, you build the vision, and after you sustain the change, it doesn't matter what's thrown at you. We have a culture that we're prepared to pivot. And I think that this organization and me as a superintendent, doesn't matter what you throw at me, it's going to be not only a challenge, it becomes a little bit more, okay, how is this going to make us better, make me grow as a leader? I don't know what I would do. Because it's every second there's something else that's new, and maybe I need that type of stimulation. I don't do well with boredom, so I love it. And ultimately, when we get a little sprinkle of stories that we can highlight, yesterday, I know some people were possibly taken back with all the negativity, but I heard 4 bright spots there.
There you go.
And those 4 bright spots outweigh.
At a public board meeting, you got 4 public positive comments.
Yesterday evening.
There you go.
Thank you for reestablishing a Latino consortium that existed. And one was a written comment that wasn't read into the public record. It was really nice. Unfortunately, that person couldn't make it because we went deep into the night yesterday. There's a lot that we can already point to in terms of successes. I just wish that whatever motive certain individuals have, they can just articulate that so people know why you're saying what you're saying. Because I question if it's for the kids. And if I question it, that's not a good place for you to be in. I'm the fifth or fourth superintendent the last 5 years, if you count the interim superintendents, one of which is a dear friend of both of ours, who's one of the best, if not the best leader.
The leader after whom you're
That's
awarded
right.
name, Dwight Jones.
The Dwight Jones Courageous Superintendent Award. We had Dwight Jones, we had Susana Cordova, we had Ron Cabrera, who's one of the members of my transition team. We had Tom Boasberg and myself. Those are the 5 in the last 4 years. And before that, it was Michael Bennett, who's our senator. Tom Boasberg was close to 10 years, so it's definitely possible. A colleague of mine and someone who's proven did well over that down in Miami, and now he's looking to do that in LA.
Unified,
Those situations do happen, but it's the anomaly. Unfortunately, because of the politics, the motive, the stress, we have this 2.7, I think you said 2.8, in terms of the average lifespan of the superintendent, particularly in an urban setting. It's unfortunate. I think that we, like I said earlier, can do a better job highlighting what we do instead of saying, please help me, poor me. I want to thank you all in IEI. This takes courage, pardon the pun. It's not easy to say, hey, you're doing great work. It's easy to join the bandwagon saying, okay, everybody hates that person. Right? That's the easy thing to do. The path of least resistance. Well, you all are taking and saying, wait a second, why? Right? And when you ask why, you dig in, oh, it's because of this. And ultimately it comes down to helping the system, which the system is here to make sure students have an opportunity to succeed. Once you dig deeper, then you realize that some may be jumping ship early. Unfortunately, some members of the public and even board members are taking action, I wouldn't say prematurely, or because they don't have all the facts. It is my hope that me and my colleagues can bring that average of the superintendency lifespan back up to where it needs to be, because we know that maybe you can have some change in 2 years in terms of, let's say, graduation rate, like we're fortunate to tout here. But 3 years to really crank it up, 4 years to sustain, and after 4 years is where you really, that's the hard part. It's easier to go from poor to good. It's harder to go from good to great. And I want to experience good to great. I have a pretty good track record from poor to good, right? Pretty good. As a principal, as an assistant soup, deputy soup over there, soup over here, from poor to great, whether it's in terms of student outcomes, in terms of structure, equity work. I want to be part of the good to great conversation. So I'm hopeful that I'm given the opportunity here. And I'm hopeful that my colleagues are given that opportunity. And in order for that to happen, we have to not give them grace, because we don't need pity. What I need is asking the right questions and true support. And I know my colleagues need the same. And then we'll have true impact, because you need to be in the post and see the fruits of your labor come to fruition. It doesn't happen overnight.
I'm so much more excited now to for our fall summit in Boulder, because I just want to go hug Alex Marrero when I see him, because I knew there was great things happening, but unfortunately, the issue with the SROs, school shootings, and all that kind of stuff is what you will always hear about. And it's, you don't hear about the sustainability club. That's not making, the national news anyway. I'm not hearing about it here in Omaha. So thank you for sharing all the kind of feel good, fun, cool things that are happening under Dr. Marrero's leadership.
There's a lot of focus on students and celebrating students coming back, and but soon after that honeymoon's over, we're going to get into what's next for DPS, and I'm very curious to see where Dr. Marrero takes the district next.
Absolutely.
Well, that does it for another episode of Stories from the Field, the Superintendent Podcast. So glad you're here with us. Look forward to sharing the next episode with you. But before we end this episode, Sarah, I just want to make sure we give a big shout out to Dr. Marrero his team in his office who helped make him available and make the space available for us to do these interviews, and especially to Bill Good in the Denver Public Schools Media Relations Office. They rolled out the red carpet for us and helped us connect with everybody in town. So thanks everybody in Denver, and congratulations on all your great work.
To create these stories, it takes a village. This episode was directed by John Freeman, videography and audio by Sho Matsuyama, Chase Mazo, John Freeman, Sarah Kroll, and Doug Roberts. Edited by John Freeman, Chase Mazo, and Sho Matsuyama. Stories from the Field podcast was produced for IEI with Century Tree Productions. Be sure to like and share these stories with anyone and everyone. Yes, they are that inspiring. IEI is committed to bringing educational leaders together to ensure that they have the influence, access, resources, and support they need to lift students' voices. We empower superintendents to amplify their voices, becoming thought leaders who shape the future of education.